Paul and I are going to talk to you about a case study that we've been working on for many years now, which is Quebec Park in Borden-Whitehill. The presentation we're giving is really a collaborative presentation on behalf of a number of partners who've been involved in the scheme, including East Hamptons District Council, ourselves, Radian, as the client, ArchitecturePLB, the National Energy Foundation, and Greenbox Associates, who are our energy consultants. This is the presentation we're going to give. It's going to be a little brief history about Whitehill and Borden, a bit about Radian's journey, the app, the design implications, results, and some of the priorities. So Whitehill and Borden is in Hampshire. It's not too far from sort of Petersfield, just off the M3. You can see there that it's a former army town. It was designated actually as an eco-town back in 2009. That didn't last for very long, so in 2012 the eco-town principles were lost effectively. But because it had been designated as an eco-town, the local authority and the town, the Whitehill Borden town, were really keen to embed energy efficiency and sustainability within ongoing projects within that town. Particularly, as you can see, being a town which is due for quite a significant amount of redevelopment, over 15 years to create nearly 3,500 new homes, 5,500 jobs, etc. So it's a major redevelopment of a former garrison town. And clearly the local authority wanted to make sure that when they did this, that they were achieving the highest level of sustainability and quality in what they're trying to do. So as they went through this process, clearly with an eco-town there were certain expectations in terms of building performance standards. When the eco-town principles were lost effectively, the local authority started to change their vision of what they wanted to do and how they were going to try and manage the performance, how they were going to try and manage delivering the performance on the schemes that they had coming up. So they were working with the National Energy Foundation to try and put together an assured performance process. That assured performance process was really looking at trying to bring a performance standard into the sort of planning requirements for the site. So we as a potential client here were originally looking at trying to do something to code standard, and as the scheme developed through, we embraced trying to deliver the app. So in terms of what Radian we're actually trying to achieve here, we have been on a journey for several years now, and we started a project in 2009 which was to try and achieve a zero carbon standard by 2016. So we identified 4 sites which we worked on. We delivered different standards of construction, different types of energy efficiency, and we did a lot of post-occupancy evaluation of those schemes as we went through to try to work out what is best for Radian as a client in terms of delivering outcomes for our residents. This is just some of the evidence in terms of the performance that we got from some of our houses. Particularly the Stoneham Green, one of the schemes that you had the photograph of there before, where we delivered 12 Code 6 homes, which actually delivered very much a similar performance that we're getting on the scheme that we're actually now delivering at Quebec Park. We have got this in other formats, so we can have a look at it more if anybody wants to. But for Radian, the performance is critical as much as anything because we have long-term stewardship of those properties. We're really keen to avoid residents coming into fuel poverty and being able to deal with affordable warmth. But also as a housing provider, like many other social housing providers, we're also moving into the sales market. And because we're sort of a new brand going into that sales performance arena, we're really concerned about making sure that we deliver houses that we say they're going to perform, how they're going to perform, we'll do it. So property misdescription is again quite key to what we're trying to achieve. So Quebec Park for us was really important. We won it on an open competition through OJU. We had to provide 100 homes, but we also had to provide them to be low energy. We had to provide 100 jobs, and we wanted it to be commercially viable because this is our move into being a social housing provider, but also a house builder, effectively. So, as I said, we embraced the app, which was brought forward by the National Energy Foundation, This is very much sort of a quality assurance process. It doesn't actually change the standards at which we're building at. So we were building to high levels of sustainability anyway, but actually what we're trying to achieve here is, even if we're building to building regulation standard, is to actually build to the standard we say we're going to build to. So it's really addressing that gap in the performance. And it very much picks up on a lot of the research that had been done elsewhere through Innovate UK, through the Zero Carbon Hub. And it moves away from being that sort of tick box compliance approach to being much more about good workmanship, being able to do things as you expect them to be done on site. So it's much more about delivering what we say we're going to deliver. So what is the app? It's based very much on reviewing design at the design stage, looking at it through the construction stage, doing toolbox talks with the contractors, spending time on site, reviewing what the contractors have done, and effectively then looking at the outcomes at the end of the time. And really, as much as anything, it's trying to avoid some of the things that are seen elsewhere on sites where good quality is not maintained throughout the whole process. And in terms of what Radian wanted to get out of it, it is about lower energy demands for every home. It's making sure that we were confident in delivering the homes that we said we were going to deliver. It's assuring we get resident satisfaction, and it's about reducing the need for Radian to have to spend so much time on site micromanaging a project. So this enables us to sort of stand away from some of that. And for us, it became more sustainable than the code. So the app, as I say, at Quebec Park, looks at accountability, clarity of performance, ensuring feedback, etc. And it's about designing out the risk of overheating. At the end of the day, we're looking for evidence that we're delivering what we say on the tin.
So I'm going to take you through some of the design implications that came about, and also some of the in-use monitoring that has been going on since. So in terms of our target was a bit of a moving feast. We started off with various code levels. They were obviously scrapped, but we retained, we were one of 4 trial projects for the Zero Carbon Hub standards across the country. And so we retained the fabric energy efficiency and carbon compliance aspects of those. Fabric energy efficiency becomes an absolute standard. It's not relative to elemental values. So we were looking at a roughly a 25% improvement over building regs for the fabric of the building, and about a 45% improvement on current Part L in terms of carbon compliance. But throughout all of those, we had this assured performance. So this was really just trying to get to the point of not understanding that we could deliver to this standard. On top of all that, of course, we were in a position where we were being asked to provide an exemplar scheme in terms of energy and design. It was the first part of a very large regeneration scheme, as Jonathan's mentioned. So we had, it had to be a mixed-use scheme. We had to provide high-quality housing. There are aspirations for retaining existing features, and there are also wider master plan aspects that weren't in place yet that we had to integrate into. So it was very much a mixed bag approach. And at that point, the app landed on us, and there was a bit of trepidation initially that this was going to mean we had to start again, but actually we found that the measures that we've been asked to integrate, we had, because we were already aiming for a very robust, sustainable approach, we were already meeting a lot of these requirements. So we're going to look at the latter half of those aims of the app now. Just to take a step back, though, at very early stages, when we were looking at how to produce this very sustainable scheme, we did look at a solar design, a very south-orientated scheme. In the context of Whitehill and Borden, though, this was felt to be almost too progressive. It's quite a conservative, small C town. The advice that we were given that this would generate too much controversy politically and with locals, and it just wouldn't be accepted. So we did look at more of a perimeter block, more traditional scheme, clearer hierarchy of routes, shared spaces, and internal spaces that looked at placemaking as a priority. That evolved into the scheme that is built, where we have a number of key spaces and a focus on character areas and creating a sense of place. And really that is, in many ways, dare I say it, more important for this particular project than some of the energy aspects, because it was the start of a long process, and there needed to be an acceptance and a buy-in from the local councillors and the local residents to make sure that it worked for them. But in doing this, we did generate a very simple, robust set of dwellings that could obviously withstand some of the changes in target. So one of the key aims of the app was to incorporate best practice passive low energy design, and having looked at the solar orientation parts of it, there are obviously schemes that have focused on this, and this is not to denigrate that approach whatsoever, but for us there was a feeling that should solar design lead the process to such an extent. There are a number of schemes where it's been done very successfully, but it cannot be applied everywhere. It needs to be something that performance should not be reliant on purely south-facing dwellings. And at which point do you start to manipulate your roof profile? The sawtooth roof on the side of the picture there, I feel quite appealing as an architect. So visually, I quite like it. But from a performance point of view, in hindsight, looking at it now, that would have been a nightmare to produce, because it with so many difficult junctions with party walls and valley gutters, it would have been very difficult to actually assure the performance at those points without it being very labour intensive for the contractor. So we had our placemaking approach that looked at a suboptimal solar design. We had a lot of west-facing facades, which combined with enhanced U values, we're looking at near passive house levels of insulation, reliance on natural ventilation and window restrictors that are somewhat ubiquitous. There was a very high risk of overheating. Our approach to trying to overcome this was as low-tech as we could, so we effectively put in a system of shutters and pergolas to the west-facing facades. These were integrated into the architecture as much as possible, so that you could almost start to read the scheme and its climatic response from the buildings. They're also integrated into aspects such as the semi-private defensible spaces, so pergolas and overhangs to front doors were part of that defensible buffer zone that you get, that is so essential to make a well-functioning scheme. They have been realised. We did have to go through quite a difficult VE, value engineering process at tender, and obviously they did come under some scrutiny. However, in doing so, it has revealed that the way that you model these things needs to be very robust. One of the studies that was produced looked at a modelling procedure that proved that they weren't necessary, that you could emit them without the buildings overheating. But once you drilled down into it, you found that actually the requirement for doing that was at exactly 22 degrees C, the windows had to be opened fully, at whatever time of day that was. So whether people were in or out, they have to have a thermometer on their wall with an alarm that goes off that means that they then open the window fully. It's impractical and it's not going to work. So the shutters was a simple idea that you could pull it across. It's all manual. There are no mechanical parts, and it has proved to be very successful. Obviously, it's not right for all locations. We have some south-facing buildings, and there are single-aspect units in here where, again, overheating was a risk. So we looked at other solutions there. In other areas, it's simply a slightly deeper reveal on the windows. On the more affordable units, there was a concern over misuse and damage and robustness. So we looked at a fixed solution in some of those areas. But throughout the scheme, there was this attention to detail on the overshading. And as I say, I particularly like how you can start to get a feel for the climate and orientation of the scheme based on how the elevation has been adapted to its overshadowing requirements. So another key aspect was, obviously, we have this scheme, am I in trouble? We have the scheme and we need to make sure it's realised. We were looking at a timber frame solution, so we worked hard with the subcontractors to make sure that that was doing what it needed to do. We went through a lot of detail in our thermal bridges to make sure we knew where all the timber, all the structural elements were, and make sure that we were getting a nice even temperature internally. But even then, we have a performance gap. We have our design of our timber in a nice amount of insulation. On site, though, we end up with what you see on the right here, where there are 11 timber studs in one place here. But more to the point, a tiny little gap. How are you meant to insulate that? You get thermal bypass, you get these problems. So even when we were trying to pay attention to these details, they still sneak through. Not wanting to contractor bash, but it was a difficult process. That, in effect, we had an in situ U value, came at 0.19 instead of 0.15, so quite a substantial increase. And a timber fraction of 26% compared to 15, which was put into SAP. I know short on time, so I'll skip a few bits, but we have been doing some monitoring, a bit of occupant monitoring, and two key issues: the shutters. Everybody uses them; they all find a benefit from them. This is 30 out of the 100 homes we've received feedback here. Do they help with overheating? Predominantly, yes. It's by a long way the reaction. Somewhat more tenuously, do you feel that your home is more energy efficient? Yes, but some people have come from family homes or other places where they don't really know the results. So in terms of what the previous speakers were talking about, it's really important to know the context. In terms of space heating, we're very early days here. The numbers here are purely just for our reference, so they're not actual house numbers, but it's showing that the actual in-use is very, very close to SAP. So I think we are online to prove that we are in a good place. There are differences. Obviously, 78 and 84 are there or thereabouts within acceptable limits with regard to SAP. 87 and 88 are much below. Why might that be? And I think this is important in terms of getting a complete data set. So we've looked at internal temperature as well. The same plots that are pretty much bang on SAP are actually enjoying nearly 23, 24 degrees internal temperatures, which is very, very warm and toasty. Thank you very much. The others that are using less energy are around 19 degrees. So there is a clear correlation there between people's desired comfort levels and the amount of energy that they're using. We are also monitoring hot water demand, slightly less able to run a clear link, but generally they're thereabouts, apart from somebody who clearly likes a lot of baths. So there will always be anomalies. But in the round, we feel that we're pretty much on target, but we do need to collect more data, and we're running the monitoring for another 2.5, 3 years. So, in summary, and I'll try and make this quick, much of what the app is trying to do is really just good design, but it is trying to bring back some of that rigor that has been found to be lacking in many of the other previous schemes. And it does not seek to create a new standard, but really just ensure that you are meeting your standard. And for that, I think it's very powerful. To achieve this, take a holistic view. I think it's really important that you do look at objects in the round. Don't get lost in greenwash, such as the possibility of south-facing sawtooth roofs. Are they really necessary? Better literacy for all, I think, is essential. Planners, developers, everybody needs to get on with this, and providing feedback so that we can all share and learn in these results. Take time, model, analyse, understand your climate, work out how you're going to build it, and make sure that the contractor is engaged in that process. But keep it simple. If something is complicated to build, it will be easy to get wrong. And if a system designed to be in use is complicated, then people simply won't use it. And I think they're some of the key issues that we found here. Thank you very much.